what's your schedule like? You mentioned like the 7 on, 7 off. Maybe explain a little bit
Sure,
of like
sure.
that. Is that typical for a hospitalist? Or I think you've even explained to me just in our own conversations, kind of the different schedules that hospitalists can have, but maybe kind of lay out
Sure.
that for the listeners.
Sure, sure. So it's hard to generalize, but I'd say at least 75% of hospital medicine schedules, probably almost pushing 80% nationwide, are you work 7 days straight and then you're off 7 days. So for my schedule, I start on a Tuesday and I end the following Monday. So what happens is usually that Tuesday morning, I'll have a sign out email to me of, let's say, 18 patients.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened. This needs to be followed up with. And what happens is that first day is always the hardest because it's 18 new people that, it's my first time seeing them, first time doing a physical exam, first time, patients who are very sick, patients that sometimes, are ready to be discharged.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, I'm very used to it. But that first day is always, and also the documentation. You try to do your notes a certain way and have it kind of broken down a certain way. So that's that first day. You start off with so many patients.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if you don't have a lot of patients, you'll have admissions. But I think our program does a great job. Is a lot of times we don't get as many admissions the first day, but that first day is always kind of the most hectic. As you're learning, you get an existing service of patients from another hospitalist who is signing off, and you take over, learn the patients, get admissions and discharges. Um, I'd say starting the Wednesday, say I start on Tuesday, that's always the busiest day. Usually, most days, this is my institution, and I think a lot of institutions follow this. Usually, wake up at 6. I drive 25 minutes, so I leave at like 6:20, 6:25. I get there around 6:50. I have a coffee, and I get my list. I probably start around 7, usually around 7 a.m. And this is just me. A lot of people, like, I have the list from like usually 7 to 8 a.m. I'll read over all the patients. And you get quicker after a while. I start reading their vitals. I usually, first off, I'll read the sign. Let's say a patient comes in with acute CHF, and I'll read their vitals, I'll read their labs. I'll see if the hospital's rough, they think they're ready for discharge. I'll read the past imaging. I could do it pretty quickly at this point. So I do that for all those patients.
Mm-hmm.
Starting around 8 a.m., then I'll start rounding, and I'll first find the nurse and tell them, this is the patient. I'm the new hospital's picking up service. What's the and a lot, your nurses, they're with the patient. They're your biggest asset. They're phenomenal at all places, and I think they have the hardest job in medicine. So you really want to have a very good relationship because a lot of times they've had the patient for days before, and they might say, "Well, no, he's still still wheezy, has crackles." Let's say that CHF patient, and then you examine them, and I do all my patients, and everyone's different. Some people like to round, then do notes in between. I have a lot of colleagues who will round, do a few notes, round, do a few notes. I'm the type I like to see everyone, talk to all the family members. Then let's say by 12, 1 o'clock, then start to have lunch, do my notes the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Where I work, most days we get off at 5. Every fourth day, someone stays till 7. We take calls from 5. There's 4 of us. We take calls from 5 to 7 p.m. But that person who stays till 7 p.m. every fourth night, from 5 to 7 p.m. when they're in the house, they handle emergencies. So if it's 5:15 and I'm driving and there's an emergency that if I'm not there till 7 physically, the person who's there will handle the rapid response. Uh, Most days I get home 5:30, but I can handle calls and any orders you could do on the computer till 7 p.m. But a lot of times I can go to the gym at 5:30. I could do things from my phone. Everything's remote.
Mm-hmm.
After 7 p.m., you don't get any calls at all. There's a nocturnist. So most places have a nighttime physician where this is very nice versus other specialties, ER, you're rotating nights. Most places have what they call a nocturnist. They get admissions at night. They handle all emergencies. So I never get called in the middle of the night. And I always tell nurses they're more than happy to if they need, but it's just there's someone in house.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Wednesday and Thursday it gets easier. But definitely once you get to Friday and Saturday, it gets much easier. Monday's not as bad because it's not when you get past the first 2 3 days, it's much easier because you know everyone. And plus you're admitting your own patients a lot of times, so it's much
Sure.
easier. I'd say when you get to the last 2 3 days, that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's much easier. And then Monday, I'm the messenger. I do the sign out saying this patient came in with a GI bleed. GI is watching their hemoglobin. They're tentatively stable for tomorrow. And I'm very fortunate. I have a phenomenal group of colleagues who do great sign outs, great continuity care. Like their notes are very efficient. And then once you're off, so I was started off on Monday. So Tuesday, then you're just, your time's free. I mean, once you're off, I mean, there's occasionally some things I look up, I do some CME, but once you're off completely, and this is kind of a new schedule, it took me some time to get used to, is that, you get used to being in a very regimented schedule in medical school where your weekends, you're not truly weekends, you're studying. There's work to be always residency. You work 6 out of 7 days a week, and then you have the one day off. Now it's even sometimes it takes me to get used to to occupy that free time. I mean, I'm not married, I don't have kids, so I understand people have families that it's very easy for that time to be occupied. But a lot of people, if you're finishing residency, it's it's just you. It's you find different hobbies and things, and but it's nice to have that time off. It's nice to have that freedom. You can always pick up shifts as well. But I really value that time. So those 7 days off, you're free. It's just I think hospital medicine has the best schedule in medicine. I think I've never, when you do the math, I think I did the math one time. Even if you were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, even though, like I said, I work 10, 10, 10, and then a 12-hour because every day is 7 to 5, except that fourth day.
Sure.
I mean, you do the math, you work 72 hours every other week. That adds up to 36 hours a week. When 72 every other week, that's 36 hours a week. I mean, I really, and when I leave at 5, I might get a call or two, but I pick up the phone, but it's not like I'm doing notes. I always finish my notes before I'm done. I think that's important in medicine to try to get your documentation before. So when I leave, I might put an order or two. I've had an emergency where I had to transfer someone. It took me 10, 15 minutes to do some things on the phone. I might have had to log in and type a quick note, but I think that's a benefit of hospital. A lot of physicians, if you do it well, finish your notes while you're there.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's important, quality of life. I think there's a great quality of life with hospital medicine. I think it's just, I think that we'll have to see with time, and I know it's sometimes an untraditional schedule because you're off every other weekend. But even the weekends I work, I get there at 7. Some days I can leave at 4. So I mean, still have the night ahead. And I think it's just a great kind of life balance.
Yeah, so it's almost like ER in the sense that it's like shift work. Like you do your like when you're on, and then like you said, like you have a night, and that's essentially another aspect of hospitalist medicine, right? Is like a nocturnist who they only cover nights. Like they'll go 7 nights in a row and then 7 days off. Correct?
Yeah, and I think nights. Yeah, that's a nocturnist is like essentially a hospitalist physician that just works at night. And I think the hard thing I actually considered it because nocturnists probably make another probably say 20 to 25%, 20% more. I'd say than a hospitalist physician. So they definitely can make. I mean, that's definitely definitely 20 to 25% more can add up. But I think the thing that my father was a nocturnist, and I saw how physically difficult it was for him. And I think nocturnist medicine, you got to really love nights because I think someone once told me this. It's like you're operating against gravity. Some people love it. Some people love nights. There's a lot of benefits to nights. You don't have to deal with the discharges. A lot of times, as much as we love family members, it's always a pleasure to interact with them. A lot of times at night, you're just focusing straight on seeing the patient, admitting them. You just do admissions. Admissions are much easier to do than follow-ups. You focus on the admission. There's more revenue. But at the same time, it's not an easy sleep cycle. I've seen that when you do 7 straight nights, you got to remember when you work nights, they don't get the 10-hour breaks I do. They're working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's not like it's a 12 hours. And when they go to bed, I think most people see when you work nights, you can try to go to bed, let's say at 8 a.m. After that shift, you may wake up at 12 p.m. and then go take another nap. It's not a very natural, being up at night's not natural. Some people love it. Me, it wasn't conducive to as much as sleep. And then I noticed when I tried it my week off, it took me more days to just get readjusted and then I was back in the swing. So I think if you like nights, then you do it. But some people, I just think I just wanted a little bit normalcy. And then I'm along the road when I have a family, it would be more conducive to have a daytime schedule.
So you mentioned that, you're on this 7 off, 7 on schedule. I guess just for people considering the career, like what's the general, like you're essentially working half the month, which is awesome, which is great lifestyle. What's like I guess salary? I realize it's like very variable, probably where you are in the country, what type of hospital stay, but like, what's kind of like the like range you've seen of salaries out there? And obviously it probably depends, like you mentioned, those jobs that maybe have some more critical care responsibilities, they may be a higher salary, is, you know, in those scenarios.
Sure, sure. I think the range I've seen coming from Florida to Midwest, I think a lot of them you could range from like I guess I think total you got to ask yourself I guess total salary. So what's nice about being a hospitalist is when you work for someone. When I talk about like salary, this is separate from malpractice they're paying for,
Mm-hmm.
healthcare benefits and things like that. So I think from a total take home, I think a total compensation, most positions, if you're doing strictly every other week,
Mm-hmm.
you could see between 230,000 and 300,000. That's just working every other week. Keep in mind if you pick up shifts, some people have production models. I think there's some places where it's 230,000 to 300,000 every other week, just working half the year, which is phenomenal. But then some institutions, there could be a production component where you see so many patients and you can make over 300,000. Um, I've seen some hospitals making the mid threes and or high threes because they pick up so many shifts.
Sure.
So I mean, so some people like to work 25, 26 days in a month. I can imagine they're making 425,000. But a lot of people do hospitalist, even if they're making 260, 270, they're off every other week and like that time off. But some places also have a component, even if you're just making, let's say you make 250,000, some places have a quality bonus. If you meet certain metrics, you can make an extra 20, 30,000. So I think the average, when I factor that, and I think about 260, 270 is the total for everything, including that bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also, like you said, depends. If you're going to a major city, it's probably a little bit less. If you're going to less, more in demand. But you definitely can do very well and have a great quality of life and time off without having to worry about the extra headaches of a private practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine on the academic side, some people probably use that time off maybe to do research or maybe get more involved in like, you know, residency leadership or like,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
or teaching medical students or things like that. Maybe they use that extra time to kind of pursue other academic interests or professional interests, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at times. I'm still kind of tossing it back and forth to look at an MBA, but I mean, because you have the time off. I mean, there's things to do.
Right.
You have time off to do things. So it's definitely something you can look up and have time for. So yeah, I do have a few colleagues. My medical director, she does administrative days. My other colleagues just like the time off with their spouses and families. But I do then I have other colleagues who pick up shifts. I do know someone who did pursue an MBA as well. So yeah, there's definitely time off. I mean, when you do the math, I mean, it averages out. I mean, when you work 14 days, it averages out essentially like probably two almost it's 14 days every. I mean, the average person works 5 days and 2 days weekend, 5 days, 2 weekends. So instead of working 20 days, you work 14 days, which is essentially 2 weeks and 4 out of 5 days a week. So there's plenty of time off to do things.
Sure.
So it's definitely. I'm still trying to figure out what to do too. So I'll let you know when I find besides hobbies. So